who may be interested in joining the group which we will call UMNOS 17, because you'll be starting in 2017. I'm about to introduce the Dean of the Melbourne Graduate School of Education, Professor Phil Rickards, and as I introduce him, I want to say just a couple of words. The Melbourne Graduate School of Education is in the top 10 in the world and #1 in Australia, and I'm always fascinated by people who implement, people who make things happen. And every one of you is the person who has to make things happen. And to be the person who is responsible for the transformation of education at Melbourne University, I think is extraordinary. So I have such respect for our Dean's role, and I want to welcome him. Thank you.
Catherine, you always know how to embarrass me, but I thank you for that. I'd like to welcome you all here. I've never seen a crowd quite like this. This is the fourth year that we've had an information session for networks of schools, and you could add up all of the previous four, it might come to about this. But I acknowledge that the land on which we're meeting is the land of the Wurundjeri people. We've been custodians of these lands for many generations, and I pay respects to elders past, present, and any Indigenous Australians present. I want to particularly welcome a number of people who are sitting in front of me. Our colleague, Professor Eva Mariels, who's the Dean of Engineering, who's going to say a few words to you later about the role that the university as a whole might have in this network. John Hattie, who's well known to all of you, and Jesus Camacho, who works in the UMNOS group under John's leadership. Members of the principals panel, Kerry Wood, Peter Houlihan, Catherine Delia and David Ward. They're current network members, and they're here to share with you as colleagues of what you might get out of the network. Michael Muscat, I think, is here somewhere. It will be. Michael is, I feel, the most close colleague after the Canberra Secondary College Revolution School. Canberra is part of our 2015 network. And Catherine Henderson, who you've just heard from very briefly, who's our UMNOS director. So I just want to thank you all for coming. I'm pleased to see you here. You're here as professionals committed to leading learning and teaching in your school, and you would share my vision of building the teaching profession. And that's what we've been trying to do for the last 10 years, is build the teaching profession. And the context for that really is the context of the University of Melbourne. The Glyn Davis context of the triple helix. Not only our teaching and learning, not only our research and research training, but how do we engage with the community? And in the context of the Graduate School of Education, I ask my colleagues, what are the issues out there, and what are you doing in your teaching, your research to help address those issues? This is part of it. And I think Revolution School was a wonderful example of this university engaging with the outside world. 4 weeks ago, I published an opinion piece. The treaty was Shorten's concession speech. Here are some points which I think capture the essence of it. Let me say what Bill Shorten promised. Where there is common ground, we'll work very hard to accomplish it. We have the opportunity here, the Australian people expect all sides of politics to work in the national interest. Well, so I then went on to say, well, foremost, parties must stop treating education as a political football it's been for many years and develop at least a 10 to 15 year bipartisan approach required to tackle Australia's declining performance. I mentioned PISA, and I mentioned in particular the fact that nearly a quarter of Australian children starting at primary school are delayed in one or more areas of their development, which could compromise their learning later. So what are we doing about primary teachers to, if you like, diagnose those kids on school entry and have them on track by age 8? Of course, those numbers are much higher in rural, regional and Indigenous communities, where it can be as high as 1 in every second child's at risk for learning when they enter school. Quote, these trends continue despite increased public spending on education services, the services from early years in schooling to vocational and university education. Clearly, increasing funding on its own is not enough. The real issue is the application of funds. We need a long-term strategy for education to arrest Australia's decline. This is out of the opinion piece. As Laureate Professor John Hattie's acclaimed work shows, what matters most in student learning within schools is the effectiveness of the teacher. And some teachers are more effective than others. Do we recognise that? I go on to say the Australian government must work together with their parliamentary colleagues, state, territory governments, system leaders to do 4 key things. And I just want to highlight what those 4 key things are in our view, because it reflects where we stand in the graduate school of education. First, they must increase the effectiveness of all teachers through what I call clinical teaching. We need to develop teachers' capabilities through initial teacher education and professional development to diagnose, to intervene and evaluate the wide range of individual student learning needs. Individual student learning needs. Second, they need to acknowledge that some teachers are more effective than others and that excellent teachers must be recognised through new professional structures and pay levels. Third, teachers must be enabled so that they can work in collaborative teams with lead teachers. I'll just keep using my own application system while you're doing that. With lead teachers elevated to support their colleagues, just as teams of lawyers, engineers and doctors problem solve difficult problems together. The complexity and challenge of teaching should not be tackled in isolation. And finally, school networks can effectively leverage the excellence that exists in each school. School networks can effectively leverage the excellence that exists in all schools. Focused support for effective networks will enable schools to share expertise and success to support continuous improvement. How do we know that? That's why you're here. We are #1 education faculty in Australia. A couple of years ago, I think we were ranked #2 in the world, and we have been top 10 for the last 5 years. It's brought about by a number of things. Our research programs. What makes our research programs different? Well, they're what I call theme-led. What's a major issue out there that we need to address, and big issues need big teams, and that's what we try to do. Second, I think, is our very strong pre-service teacher education program. It's in Year 9, it's called the Master of Teaching. It's what I call a genuine clinical master's degree, and at some stage during the program you'll find out a little bit more about it. And thirdly, it's our professional degrees, like the Master of Instructional Leadership and like the Master of Clinical Teaching. And we will look at ways that we can give you scholarships and offer scholarship support through the University of Melbourne network of schools, cohort 17 participants. So now we have UMNOS, our network, referred to as the University of Melbourne network of schools, not the Graduate School of Education network of schools, and that's why Eden's here, if you like, representing 9 other deans. As far as possible, we want our schools to have access to the broader University of Melbourne, not just the graduate school. And I thank Eden that you're here. So the purpose of the network is collectively impact on improving the learning outcomes and experiences of students enrolled in your schools, in all of our schools, through a structured program that focuses on teaching and learning to inform, build and use evidence base at the University of Melbourne. It will enable your schools to achieve things together that you may not be able to achieve on your own. We've now got 73 schools in our 4 networks. The 2014 network, 1 in the 2015 network, and 2 that started this year. Principals and success coordinators from these schools are here today, so you can hear directly from them. You will hear from John Hattie in a moment about the work of the network and Jesus, one of John's PhD students. I'm confident that if you are part of UMNOS 17, it will be professionally demanding. I'm confident it will be professionally demanding, but also professionally fulfilling. And for you, and your staff, not just those involved directly with us, but those more generally. And I'm sure that your students will benefit as they have so far from the other networks. So that's enough from me. I'm now going to, this is truly the one time I can say a man who needs no introduction, John Hattie, because I didn't bring an introduction with me. John, could you welcome me?
I'm sure you've heard all the latest jargon words. Professional learning communities, networks, collaboration. And it seems that that's the latest wave going around the system. And my worry is that we'll miss an incredible opportunity because so often those kind of notions are out there, but nothing happens as a consequence. Professional learning communities are a great example. What could possibly be wrong with them? except I can write their obituary now. Because they forget there is a content, there is a purpose to which those networks should come together. In the same way, I watch networks across Victoria at the moment. And I hear all this lovely discussion about how important it is you get together. Well, I have a hunch you've been getting together for many, many years. So how can we make sure that we have the right focus of conversation when we have these networks? And that's what we've spent quite a bit of time looking at with the network of schools here. And the topic is that wonderful phrase, impact. And I want to really highlight that today because it really underlies a lot of what's happened over the last 3 years. And certainly words like every kid deserves an excellent teacher by design, not by chance. Every kid deserves at least a year's growth, 3 years input. But what does that mean? They're lovely words. And no, I'm sorry, you can't go and read a book to find out what impact means. The most critical thing in this business is the thinking that each of the teachers and each of the principals have in your schools, in our system, about how they interpret that word. And so one of the major foci of the network of schools over the last few years has been to better understand what this notion of impact means. And by doing it, by getting 12 to 16 principals, success coordinators from your schools together to share that. That requires building an incredible amount of trust. And one of the ironies in today's world is that as we have demanded more and more data of you, it's harder to get you to share that data across schools. Because we've had a pretty miserable history about how it's been misused and abused. So building that trust, raising that question of what do you mean in your school by a year's growth for a year's input. And certainly the experience of many networks and many professional learning communities where principals get together is they're very good at looking up. And that they're looking up for more resources, for more ideas, for more whatevers. They're very good at looking out. This is what we do in our school. And I remember Andrea Schleicher saying a few years ago that when the ministers of education used to meet for their annual meeting, 100 of them up to the year 2000, 100 of them wanted to get up here and say, we're doing this wonderful thing in New Zealand, or Venezuela, or Australia. Now only 10 get up, because the data's on the table. There is massive variance. And one of the major messages in many networks is people get up and say, this is what we're doing. Well, I kind of don't care what you're doing. We care about the impact of what you're doing. We care about building up evidence that it's working here. And probably the thing that shines for me is the best exemplar of the network working was last year, one of the schools, and I'd have to say it was probably one of our richest schools, they didn't hire a bus, they used their own bus, and they took their staff out to a very small country, low socioeconomic school to look at their writing program. Because their evidence, talk with Hasis in a moment how we do this, their evidence was this little country school had a pretty impressive writing program that had incredible impact on their kids. And so no longer did you have to go and say, we're going to go where the shiny lights are and be like a magpie and pick up the little bits and pieces. We went about where the evidence is of where we're getting that year's growth. So how do we do that? And that's what we're looking at. And then once we do that, how do you then build a coalition of success and scale it up? And that's what the success has been over the last few years. But as I want to echo what Phil said, this is a University of Melbourne network. It's not just a school of education. And one of the things that we're very keen is to find ways that we can share with you the engagement of this incredible place. The number of people across this campus, and yeah, it's a tough campus to know what actually is going on, because there's so much going on. But how can you find ways in which perhaps some of your staff want to be involved in some of the research in history, or in engineering, or whatever? Maybe over the summer, coming in and looking at, working on some projects. How your students can find ways, as happened a couple of years ago when one of them was looking at, don't ask me why, but looking at the moats and the gates on the River Thames. It was unbelievably fascinating, actually, to find out these people were sharing this kind of understanding. And certainly one of the things you'll find in the network is it's very much focused on your needs. And each group has a focus, they work towards, and they work on, and each year it's slightly different. And I think the thing that is most impressive is to use the phrase the university is using at the moment. And it's probably a slight change from the actual official use, but the notion is this university is about the collision with minds, colliding minds. Isn't that a great metaphor? And the benefits for us is hearing your minds at work. And so it is a two-way street. But I want to come back to this notion of the networks that, as Phil said, it's not about us doing research. It's not about us teaching or teacher education with you. That's an entirely different part of the university. This was started simply because we got together and said, how do we give back? And so how do we give back? We opened the doors, and I have to say, Catherine, we're probably the biggest beneficiaries because we've learned a tremendous amount of what's happening and we're successes across the system. But we hope that as you come to know more about the network, have the chance to join the network, that we can work in a way that really makes a difference about this impact notion. I think it's almost fortuitous in a way that the success, I would argue, of the network is that it's not geographical. Once a year in August, we don't have to compete. One of the other successes, it does go across Catholic independent government. We've had a prison school, we've had special schools, and we find out very, very quickly the incredible amount of commonality across in terms of the issues we deal with. And that comes back to that thing. What does a year's growth look like? Now, in the first year, when that became the topic of major conversation, we realised, it's quite interesting actually, that across Australia, you virtually had no tools to ask that question. Short of NatLab, which was a mile wide and an inch deep, short of a few commercial texts, in the daily lives of teachers and the daily lives of principals, it is not easy to ask about growth. It's very easy to ask about where you are in terms of A, B, and C, and where you are in some percentage, but that's not what you are employed for. You're employed, I would argue, to have that year's growth. And so, we use one of our resources, and we look to Jesus. His name's actually pronounced Jesus, but it's pronounced in the other way. And what I'm going to ask you to now look at is, tell us a little about how you have worked with the groups in the past to help make this question about what does impact look like a lot easier.
Hello. I usually try to teach a little bit of Spanish during my presentation, so I want to ask you to say with me, buenos, días. So now all together. Buenos días. Wow, that was good. That means good morning in Spanish, so buenos días para todos. Good morning, everyone. I used to be in Venezuela reading books about John Hattie, and now I have the privilege that he introduced me to an audience, so dreams come true. Thank you all for being here today, and I'm here to talk about data, okay? But don't panic, it's not that bad. I have good news for you in terms of data. I joined the network for the very beginning, 2014. I was given this great opportunity to work with this group of schools, and immediately we identify some problems with the schools. So schools, you guys, you have a lot of data at your schools, big data sets, but are you making good sense out of the data? Are you using the data to inform teaching practices? Do you know the impact you're having in your schools? Those were questions that we were asking the teachers on that particular time, 2014 when we started. And yeah, the answer was no. We realized that there were a lot of confusion around the data. No? So teachers, first problem we identified was that teachers are busy, right? Teachers don't have time to sit down and do the data crunching. That was the first problem. The second problem is that there is a lack of statistical knowledge. So they're busy, they don't know, most of the teachers don't know how to perform some statistical analysis. And the third one, the most interesting one, was that they don't want to know. Teachers don't want to know how to do it, right? So they tell me, hey Jesus, I don't want to learn that variance and standard deviation you're trying to explain to me. I just want something that's it for me, all right? So that's why we decided to create an effect size calculator that was designed in 2014 and it's been continuously improved and developed throughout the years. And now we have a solid effect size calculator that is not only an effect size calculator because there are heaps. If you type in Google effect size calculator, you will find, I don't know, 50 at least. But our effect size calculator was built based on the information that we collected from all the schools that are members of the network, all the teachers, surveys, interviews, workshops, seminars. So we actually, I think that from the sample that we have, this sample is representative of the population of the schools, at least in Victoria. Because while we have private schools, public schools, co-educational, girls, boys, secondary schools, with a bit of everything. And we have designed this. So I'm going to plug my computer and I'm going to show you what it looks like. So these were some examples of what the teachers were trying to do at schools when we started in 2014. So some graphs in Excel, but really hard to understand. I'll show you another one very quickly. This one here looks a bit better, but still even for data person, a statistical knowledge person, is hard to understand. This one here, for example, wow. But yeah, schools were doing their best, no? So again, the problem we identified again was the lack of time. As I said, teachers are busy, lack of statistical knowledge, and then that the teachers actually don't want to learn about it. Okay, and this is real data. I collect that's evidence-based. Okay, and well, the solution is, according to us, have to be something fast, user-friendly, and really easy to interpret. So this is what it looks like. This is ours. This is our dashboard. This is dummy data. You can see actually the school name on top is the high school I went to in Venezuela. And this is the flag of my country, if you probably don't know. All right. So this is the summary page, what I call the summary page, the initial page. We have this one as well, which is the cohort analysis page. All right. I'm going to show you now. This is Excel. All right. So those are just screenshots, but I want to use the Excel program now to show you how to interact with it very quickly. And this is individual report. As you can see, if you're familiar with John's work, you can see here that this speedometer here is similar to the one that is on his book. And well, the effect size calculator so far at the schools, so as we said, it's been used in almost 80 schools so far in Victoria. So overall satisfaction being 5, the highest is 4.8. Very useful tool. Almost everyone agrees they're useful. I feel confident using the tool. And the last one here, I can read. Yeah, easy to use, right? So I think sorry, I forgot my glasses. So I think it's something that schools are using, something that schools are actually making good sense out of it. And it's something that will be available for you if you join the network, and not only the effect size calculator. This is an Napton version, by the way, so you must be thinking, all right, so it works for Napton, but does it work for anything else because I have a lot of data at my school? Yes, it does. We have developed not just this one, but a generic version of the calculator that works with any test that you could have at your schools. And so this all be available for you. Apart from me as a data person, will be available as well. I usually solve the problem from my desk. If I cannot, I will visit your school, so you're welcome to come to my school. All right, so I look forward to seeing you, or most of you next year. I don't know how many schools are we welcoming next year, but yeah, I have confirmation that I'll be part of the network next year as well, so I hope to see you all soon. I look forward to working with you. Okay, thank you.
I think one of the key issues here is we have people like ASOS. But critically, it's about you, and the way the network is set up is we invite a principal and a school leader, another person in the school, which becomes the success coordinator or impact coach, whatever you want to call them. And those two people are very critical to come to virtually every session. Because what you saw just then is the stuff that we're trying to make easy for you. The hard part is the interpretation. And that's the thing that we spend the most time on. What does all this mean? How does it make a difference? What do you do next? And that's where those two school leaders are really critical. Not only to take back from the network to the school, but also to work across the network with the other school leaders. So that's what it's about. And I think this is the occasion where we hear from someone.
I want to say thank you to John and to Jesus, and I want to thank both of them for their consistent support for the University of Melbourne Network of Schools and their really powerful impact on the work we're doing. So thank you both very much. Now, it is exciting for me because I think if I were you, I can tell you that I feel, first of all, I feel really lucky. I feel privileged to be able to work out of the University of Melbourne in the graduate school and to work with schools. I think, and I've worked across a number of professions in my quite extended working life, I think school people are an amazing and wonderful group of people to work with. I think there's probably maybe 1% or 2% of people working in schools who don't really care about the children and want to make a difference. It's a value-driven profession. I find you an amazing and wonderful group of people to work with. But I love my job. I'm going to spruik, so I don't want you just to hear from me. I want you to hear from the people who are actually participating in the network, because they're your colleagues, and probably what they have to say has more power for you. So I'm going to invite them to come and sit at this table and then to come up one by one to speak. They're going to speak for 3 minutes each, and then we have a short time for some questions. So Kerry Wood, who's the principal of Whitehorse Primary School. Thanks, Kerry. Peter Houlihan, who's the principal of De La Salle College. I understand we have a second Peter Houlihan in the room, is that right? Welcome. There was a little confusion earlier on. Catherine Delia, Success Coordinator, Golden Valley Grammar School. And David Lord, who's the principal of Staunton College. And what I'm going to do is ask you in that order. So Kerry, I'll ask you to come here now. To just come up, we'll time you quite fiercely, and you have 3 minutes. And then at the end of that.
Whitehorse Primary School is a merged school in Blackburn North, so lovely middle class Melbourne. And we have been in existence since 2010. So it's been quite a journey for us. We consist of a primary school, a kindergarten and a maternal health centre, which is fairly unusual, and that was part of the vision. We have things like a Stephanie Alexander kitchen garden, and all sorts of wonderful programs running. So it's a little bit different, but this problem still remains. So we became a member of UMNOS in 2014, so we're part of the inaugural crazy people that just put their hand up and said, what a great idea. And so we were part of the beginning, When Catherine asked me to speak, I started to think about what drove this whole process of us deciding that UMNOS was for us. So I would say, regardless of what educational sector you're in, I think it's safe to fundamentally say a few things remain true for all of us. Firstly, that we all want to improve student outcomes. Secondly, that we all want to build the capacity of our teachers to have the greatest possible impact on learning. Thirdly, we want to channel that very limited resource we have, called money, into learning that for our staff that is high quality and truly changes the teaching and learning, and in the end is sustainable. So they were the three things that really, or ideas that drove Whitehorse into the journey and being part of UMNOS. Today I've been asked to talk a little bit about how it has impacted on our outcomes and how successful it's been for us. We chose to work on writing, not because we were particularly failing, but because we really weren't making any inroads. So basically it was going along nicely. Impact, in truth, we didn't really know how to make that impact or what to really look for in our data to find out how to make that impact. It just coincidentally, we're the only primary school in our writing group. The rest of the team are secondaries from private and Catholic schools. Just to give you an idea of our starting point, in 2013, our data showed we were above state average. Our lower performing children were above the state lower performing children. Our higher performing children were above the state higher performing children. So you have to wonder why we were standing there thinking we need to do something. By the end of our first year with UMNOS, our average students were in the top 25% in writing. Our weakest students had moved from just above the 10th percentile to above the 25th percentile. And our highest performing students had reached dizzying heights. Keeping in mind that NAPLANE, as John Hattie would always point out, has its limits. So it was just for us to see, were we having an impact? This trend continued with small variations from one cohort to the next. And on the average over the past 2 years, our relative growth has shown a reduction in the number of our students making low growth by 8%, which seems little, but that's pretty significant for us. So that's just between 2015 2016. Although the data I've talked about so far is really NAPLANE data, we're also producing the same or better outcomes in our eWrite assessments, which is the assessment of choice for our UMNOS group. So what has been the impact of our teachers? In terms of effect size, we're 0.8 is the average for 2 years. Our results for the last 3 years in writing have been 1.4, 1.52, 1.45 respectively, which is a pretty respectable achievement. When we started the journey, our staff were appropriately cynical. But accessing highly skilled presenters, and the only way we would have even known about these people was through UMNOS. Our teachers have become much more committed. They have become much more effective. But do we have the blockers and naysayers? Of course we do. But they're becoming distant voices who are left with the option to join in or get on the bus. Some are coming in from the fringes and others are considering the bus. The true results are yet to come, and we are turning our idea to consider sustainability. As each year's passed, our data has gradually grown better. I recently had the joy of telling my staff they're kicking goals. Will it slow them down? I don't know, but I don't think so. As John Hattie said this morning, the finest examples of high impact can be seen in the most surprising places. So next Monday, a group of my staff are off to Jackson Special School to talk about feedback. This is part of the sustainability and part of the change in thinking of our staff. They have changed their conversation, changed their thinking, celebrated their successes, and every day look for new ways to understand what the children are presenting them with. And they are very hungry for high quality PD, all of which you can find as being a member of UMNOS. Thank you.
Kath wrote to me a couple of weeks ago and said you come along and speak for 3 minutes at the UMNOS breakfast. Well, that's great. 3 minutes doesn't take very long, won't be much preparation. Then, as anybody who's worked with me in various schools, there's a couple of them here, I've never given a 3-minute speech in my life. So I decided, instead of elaborating in great detail about the benefits of UMNOS, of which there are many, I just give a series of bullet points in relation to the question that Kath posed us. Drawing on our school's experience, why might a school want to join the network, and what could a school expect if you do join and participate in the network? Just to start with, we're a Catholic boys' school, about 1,160 students in Melbourne, one class each of grade 4, 5, 6, and then a normal size secondary school, 7 and 12. So, why do we join, and what might you get out of it if you did join? It's a great way for a school to be connected to current thinking and practice within the broader education. What it does enable you to do is create a formal, structured professional learning agenda which each school sets itself. That's the great beauty of it, which you set yourself your own targets. And then you work over the course of the years with the advice, support, and the mentoring from the Melbourne Graduate School. If you have an explicit improvement agenda, the previous school was writing, ours was maths you chose. It's primarily focused on learning and primarily focused on teacher improvement. Then UMNOS is a great thing for you to be involved in. One of the things that was most attractive to me was the opportunity to work with the Melbourne Graduate School of Education and the resources that are available there, including best practice, the most contemporary academic research. You work with policymakers. It's a network that involves both primary and secondary and cross-sector with independent, Catholic and state schools, primary and secondary, which has been a real strength of the program, we think. For us in particular, the collation, analysis and use of data to a much, much more complex level than we had been doing before. NAPLAN, of course, as has illustrated before, that's been a real eye-opener, the effect size calculator, but broader analysis using our own internal data and identifying the zone of proximal development. And also, that's been particularly helpful for us. We've really zeroed in on Year 7 maths and Year 10 maths. What's been the shift? What's some of the outcomes? For us, there's been a significant shift in the emphasis in assessment from achievement to growth and progress. And then with that, the critical impact of teacher effectiveness. Access to the high quality academics, nearly every UMNOS session. We have John come along, Patrick Griffin, Steve Denham and a number of others. So it's great to hear from them on a regular basis not about the book they wrote 2 years ago or the things we did when we studied ourselves, but what's happening in education at the moment that's going to have the most impact in our classrooms. Has been really helpful. Particularly helpful also sharing stories from other schools, other ideas and opportunities for networking, again across a range of sectors, primary and secondary, to see you're not alone in trying to deal with the problems you have in your own school. And it really encourages us to look outward to see what's happening in the educational community. Again, for us specifically, a renewed focus and a renewed understanding on what a true professional team should be. Some terrific examples from other schools, both primary and secondary, about what works well in professional learning teams for them. It's helped to establish and maintain our priority within our own school's agenda of competing demands on the aims and the subsequent plans set within the network. So much going on, but when you're involved for 2 or 3 years in a network like this, it enables you to keep the focus and keep the pace up. So we begin a major project and see it through with support and guidance, which has been terrific. Thank you.
She's not a school principal. She's a success coordinator. We're going to do a little bit more talking later about what a success coordinator is, but Catherine will be able to give you some sense of her role.
Good morning, everyone. As Catherine said, I am a success coordinator, not a principal. It occurs to me now as I'm addressing 100 or so principals, it would have been a good idea, as Peter said, to prepare something, but I'll just give you a little bit of an understanding of, I guess, where our school came from in joining the network and what our experience has been. So we joined in the first year, 2014. We were really excited to join the network because we thought it would give us the answer. We weren't actually sure what the question was, but we felt that at the end of 3 years, we would have it. We would know whatever the answer was. We were going to be the best school going around. I was pretty confident I was going to be the best teacher. And I'm here to tell you, if you're thinking about joining the network to get the answer, unfortunately there isn't one. So that's the first thing that you kind of need to wrap your head around. I think we felt we were going to get access to some amazing resources, and at the end of it, we were just going to know what this secret was. And of course, the real value in the network is in knowing that there isn't one secret. That teaching is hard, it's hard work, it requires an extraordinary amount of collaboration. Most teachers will tell you that actually, certainly at least when you first start teaching, it's actually kind of a little bit lonely. You generally work on your own. We have department meetings and we talk to each other in the staff room. But most people, or certainly in my experience, most people are getting in the classroom and kind of doing their own thing. So in terms of what we got out of the network, I think the first thing that really helped us is that it really taught us the value of genuine collaboration, of sitting down and talking not about my class, but about our cohort of students and how we could help them, and actually naming individual students. This student, I've got this student for this subject, and I need help with extending them or with making this material more accessible. So that was probably the biggest eye-opener for us, was that we just thought we'd join this network and someone will tell us what to do. Unfortunately, nobody tells you what to do, but actually after 3 years you'll appreciate that that's what makes it so good. I think the things you do get as part of being in the network are access to some extraordinary resources. And by resources, I'm really talking about, first of all, people. So members of Melbourne University, some critical friends who have come on board, people that you can ask whenever you're unsure of something. So we talk about the Jesus when we want to get some help with some data. I'm Catholic, so I'm probably going to hell for saying that. There are always people that we can seek help from. There are other schools that we can seek help from. We visited Footscray City College. We've shared a lot over email. There's a guy named Matt from Mount St Joseph who I think is about to block me in the email because I asked him so many questions and I never give him anything in return. So you get access to a lot of people there, a lot of knowledge, and also to a lot of time. The nature of the network means you actually have to dedicate some time to sorting out certain logistics that otherwise can sometimes get brushed under the carpet. So it forces you to spend some time doing the things that you know you need to do, but that you sometimes would otherwise neglect. In terms of what you would need in order to be ready to join the network, I think you probably need 2 things ready to go. The first one is some version of PLTs, which many schools have in some way or another. We didn't. We had department meetings, but they weren't anywhere near what we needed. So we set up in our first year, Year 7 and Year 8 English and Maths PLT group that came together, separate obviously, the English one and the Maths one, that came together to discuss our work, so that's absolutely essential. If it's at all possible for that to be protected time during the day, I think that works a lot better. And the second thing that you'll need is really well-documented curriculum. Otherwise you'll spend, as we did, probably the first 12 months actually just documenting our curriculum. Most of your principals, so I'm sure you think that your school has well-documented curriculum. I'd really encourage you to go and ask the lowest level teacher you can find, do you have well-documented curriculum? I'm sure their answer will be quite different to yours. So do you have in your school a document that sets out your learning goals, your learning activities and the assessment tasks that will follow? And some of you, as I know my principal was, will be very shocked to perhaps find the answer isn't what you are thinking. So that's kind of my spiel. It is very different to not being a principal. I do recommend you really thinking hard about the network. There's a lot of advantages to it. As I said, you might be a little bit disappointed that you don't just get the answer, but I think you will find what you do get is actually much more valuable. Thank you.
David Lord, Principal of Staunton College, but also David was a success coordinator when we started.
I was a success coordinator and now I'm the principal, but it's not necessarily a direct correlation between them. When Catherine asked me to do this, I thought, no worries, I'll get out last year's one. I actually did this last year. I didn't know it was videoed last year. I didn't know until a few weeks ago. I've now seen the video, and I've got to make sure that I say different things. We're really happy to talk about what happened as part of the network. We were in UMNOS 14. This is our 3rd year. This is the last year that we're involved.
I'd also like to thank the three previous speakers for making sure that I don't say what I said last year, because they basically said what I said. I'm going to just go through a few highlights and some reasons why you might want to think about being involved. We think that we've had dramatic change in the way that we're approaching our PLTs in terms of growth and also in terms of what are the students ready to learn, and we think that's a direct result of the work that we've done in this network. It's really important if you're thinking about joining that you make sure that you align what you're doing with what you do in the network. This is not an added on thing, and I think that's where people have found it's really important to make sure that you align the work you're doing in the school with what happens in the network. And it's also, again, as was pointed out just before, that the network doesn't do things to you, you work with it. And we've been involved in a really powerful group called the Evidence Informed Practice Group, which we've worked really hard to get together to build trust, to build sharing and then visiting over the time that we've been involved in the 3 years. In this group, talking about how we've actually worked as a network, we've visited each other's schools. We've looked at how they're coaching or how they're using data. That was with a P to 9 school. With a large independent school, we've looked at how they're using data from the whole school down to the student. With a small specialist school, we've looked at how they're measuring progress in areas where it's not easy to find existing measures of progress. With a smaller independent school, we've looked at how they're working on their PLTs and how they've been able to keep change manageable. And we've really learned from each other. And we've really made a change in all our schools from being able to work in that focus group. So the power of that focus group is that we've committed that we're going to keep meeting and we're going to keep learning from each other. And that's something that's happening. Sometimes you involve these things and you finish, and sometimes people honestly probably think, thank goodness, I don't have to go to that anymore, I don't need to do it anymore. We think that it's so powerful that we want to keep working together because we think it's improving all of our schools. So that's just something to keep in mind when you're thinking about whether you want to join or not. Thank you.